What's up, mechanics fanatics and soon-to-be chiefs of car surgery? Now, I probably don't have to tell you this, but for anyone who doesn't know, it's best to know what's going on under the hood of your car before you decide to do any kind of work on it. Just like in medicine, for example, you want your doctor to know how the human body works before they just do any kind of work on you, right? So obviously, the same goes for cars. You want to know how a car works so that you can avoid not seeing the whole picture and instead really understand how the relationship works between each of the car's body parts and its impact on a car's ability to carry an insane amount of weight over hundreds of thousands of miles in its lifetime. If it were up to me, every person who drives would know how an engine runs. And I mean everyone, going from the stockbroker to the 16-year-old who just got his license to that future chief of car surgery. And for any aspiring chiefs of car surgery out there, you'll be one step closer to obtaining that goal after watching my video. In this video, I will explain to you how a car engine works, and specifically I'm talking about a 4-stroke engine, because I'm pretty sure there are no other kinds of stroke engines for cars. Don't quote me on that though. I will explain to you how a car engine works, and I will guide you through the mechanisms of each stroke and explain how they all work together in harmony to keep an engine running. I'm the Jackie of all trades, and this is... Did you know that there is more than just one type of engine out there in the world? So many different types of engine strokes, Michael Phelps would be jealous. Today we're going to focus on the 4-stroke engine because it is the standard engine used in modern cars today. There are 2 types of 4-stroke engines, as far as I'm aware. There's ones used in gasoline engines and one used in diesel engines. How the fuel mixture combusts is what makes them different. This video focuses specifically on a gasoline direct injection 4-stroke engine. Now, examples of a 4-stroke engine in this regard can be seen in many different shapes and sizes in the world. You can have it in just one cylinder, like in a lawnmower, or in several cylinders, such as the V4, V6, or V8 engine, which respectively have 4, 6, and 8 cylinders. For simplicity's sake, let's just focus on a 4-cylinder 4-stroke engine, a popular engine used in many cars today, like my 2010 Toyota Camry. So here you see the 4 cylinders. They are always going to be fixed permanently in place, while below it is the crankshaft, which is not permanently fixed in place, but rather repeating a cycle of revolutions, which in turn repeat a cycle of the 4 strokes, keeping the engine alive without any interruption of energy. This mechanism, called the crankshaft, has 4 divided sections offset at different degrees and pistons attached via a connecting rod. As the crankshaft turns, the offset pistons are carried up and down, and with each time the piston is moved to the top of the cylinder, it is at top dead center, or TDC, and that is 1 stroke. Once it is moved to the bottom, it will be at BDC, or bottom dead center, and another stroke is then completed at that point. Now let's go through what is happening during each stroke. And let's just take a second to go over a few things. So I know you guys are super smart and aren't called my mechanic fanatics for nothing, but just in case, let's review. We've got our cylinder, and inside it, where all the magic happens, there's a piston attached to a connecting rod. Now, so far, we've been playing in the little leagues, my friends, so it's time to pay attention. That said, if I can figure it out, so can you. So at the top of each cylinder, there are 2 valves, the intake and exhaust valve. They are both controlled by a separate mechanism, the camshaft, which acts very similar to the crankshaft. Both valves serve as regulators by timing the intake and exhaust fumes that enter and exit the cylinder. During the first stroke, the piston is carried down to the bottom of the cylinder, and while the exhaust valve closes and the intake valve opens, it introduces a mixture of fuel and air into the cylinder. The cylinder's intake of fuel is why the first stroke is actually named the intake stroke. The next series of events focuses on building pressure. Now, just to make sure this is drilled into your brains, remember we've got our cylinder, and for the second stroke, the piston, which will begin at the bottom of the cylinder, or bottom dead center, and our connecting rod, of course. We've got our intake valve and exhaust valve, and for the second stroke, they will remain closed in order to help build pressure inside the cylinder. Now, like I said, this stroke is all about building pressure, and it does that in a number of ways. First, because the valves are being closed, And second, because as the crankshaft carries the piston back up the cylinder, the fuel mixture is forced up with it as well, and in turn it loses volume inside the cylinder, of course. And this will increase pressure just by how laws of physics work. In between the two valves is a spark plug, which will get its moment of glory following the completion of this stroke, the second stroke, known as the compression stroke. Now let's move on to the third stroke. The third stroke is a relatively simple yet very quick process. Again, we will have our cylinder along with our intake and exhaust valves. And for this stroke, the valves, both of them, will remain closed, just as they were in the second stroke. So both the second and third stroke, the valves remain closed. Our piston begins near the top of the cylinder, pressured mixture above it, with very little space to exist. And as the piston is carried to the top during the second stroke, the pressure becomes too great for the mixture to contain, and with the help of the spark plug, is ignited and combusts. This combustion is great enough to push the piston back down and provides the momentum needed for the crankshaft to continue rotating. And that's why this stroke is rightly called the firing stroke or ignition stroke. And as you can imagine, if you have the engine designed in such a way that each of the cylinders are succeeding one another and firing one after another, then you will always have a continuous amount of energy to keep an engine running. Now for the last stroke, very simple process, series of events. We have our cylinder and intake and exhaust valve, and our piston begins at the bottom of the cylinder, and the exhaust fumes, the combusted fumes, exit the exhaust valve as it opens while the intake valve remains closed. And as the piston is carried back up the cylinder, the fumes are forced out through the exhaust valve. And as I'm sure it comes to no surprise to you, this final stroke, is called the exhaust stroke. And that completes it for the 4 strokes. Now let's do an overview. Here you see the crankshaft cylinders and 4 pistons and 4 connecting rods. As the crankshaft turns, the pistons go up and down. In the first stroke, the intake stroke, the fuel and air are introduced into the cylinder while the piston moves down. The second stroke, the compression stroke, the piston is forced back up, compressing the fuel and air mixture. And in the third one, the mixture ignites by the spark plug, forcing the piston back down, giving the momentum for the crankshaft to continue turning. And in the last stroke, the combusted fumes are exited out via the exhaust valve. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you liked it, and I hope you did. Until next time, I'm the Jackie of all trades. Bye.